As I was preparing my sermon for this week, I looked back at my last one and I realized, oh my goodness, I preached about love my last sermon. But then I remembered, somebody once told me that preachers only have one sermon and they just keep giving it over and over and over again. I thought, wow, I'm not sure if that's comforting or disconcerting to me that would be the case, whether it's a blessing or a curse to say the same thing over and over again. So I'm hoping that you don't have deja vu all over again this morning. We gathered last week for our annual meeting here in this sanctuary, engaged in the democratic process of which we are committed as a community and a religious movement. It was during that meeting that the president of the board, Michelle Carroll, explained to the congregation the origins of the sign which is on the other side of the wall behind me, Just Love, placed right beneath our other sign that says Black Lives Matter. She talked about hearing this notion of agape and sitting in the congregation and drawing a picture. I even got a copy of the napkin that it was the first drawn on, Just Love. It was lovely. And the inspiration from a TED Talk by Simon Sinek, which is called Always Start With Why. I didn't realize that this is the most watched TED Talk of all time, and it just asks us that we start with asking the question why. Why is it that we do the things we do? Why is it that we gather as a religious community, for example? And this led to utilizing the colors, as Michelle reminded us last week, of the windowsills, the carpet, and the chairs to come up with this beautiful design, which her company's graphic designer helped with. I think that this notion of just love, it makes sense in the context of such campaigns as Side with Love that began about 10 years ago now. And the current campaign of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee and the Unitarian Universalist Association called Love Resists, a campaign looking at all the ways that we as Unitarian Universalists can engage in the work of sanctuary and to resist the criminalization of many aspects of the lives that we live. The first time I saw the Just Love logo beautifully designed on paper was when the congregation gathered just outside of these walls at the corner of our campus to welcome with love the visitors that had come from Westboro Baptist Church to declare their own theology. It was a blessing to be together in a way that, in fact, I witnessed as being a loving act. I sort of thought about it as spiritual Aikido. I don't know if you are familiar with Aikido, a martial art that, as I understand, as I have been told, uses energy in a way to sort of, in a circular motion, rather than taking energy all directly. Aikido teaches us to sort of move it in a circle, in another direction. And I saw that like this notion of spiritual Aikido as we moved that energy that was being brought to us in a loving and a peaceful way as we stood together. And what better way to encapsulate that than saying, just love. I think of the phrase also as sort of like a distillation of our values into this really concentrated form, using very few words to describe a concept that is great. You know, like essential oils. Some of you who like essential oils, you know, you take the essence of lavender and you like just get it down into this little bottle. I mean, sometimes it can be overpowering, but you also have the sense of an essence And you can find many things in it. Maybe like wine as well. You know, you take those grapes and you concentrate them into it. And then from what I'm told, people can taste things like popcorn, salami, diesel fuel, and wet dogs in it. This is what I'm told. Now, I just taste wine, but you know, we can find various notes, and I think that just love is a beautiful way of inviting us into an exegesis, into an interpretation for ourselves of what that means. You know, I was thinking of it when Michelle and I were talking about it as a double entendre, but then I realized, no, I don't think it's double, because there's more than two. I guess it could be triple, quadruple, from what I learned, centuple entendre. That'd be like 100 meanings. And I discovered milluple entendre. That would be 1,000 meanings. So like I had said some weeks ago, the ancient Greek philosophers had distinguished various types of love. We've heard about this idea of eros, and the emotional love. Philia, which is a dispassionate, virtuous love, which includes loyalty to family and friends. And also agape, which is a love that is unconditional, as it expects nothing in return. This type of love, known as agape, also has to be active and thoughtful as we seek ways to demonstrate it. We're required to sacrifice our own self-interests to achieve a love which is agape. I've always liked this idea, like repeating what Mary Beth said this morning, love as an action, as a verb, and not just a noun. Agape is how I think of the love that we speak of in just love. As our chalice lighting this morning suggested, Cornell West says that never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. Expanding on that, feminist, writer, activist Bell Hooks reminds us that genuine love is rarely an emotional space where needs are instantly gratified. To know love, we have to invest time and commitment. Dreaming that love will save us, solve all our problems, or provide a steady state of bliss or security only keeps us stuck in wishful fantasy, undermining the real power of love, which is to transform us. I think of what Reverend Leslie has been talking to us about in sermons around thick ideas and thin ideas. How committed to a thick faith rather than thin. And I think the Anish love, one that is sentimental, I think of it as a thick love, a fierce love that we are engaged in. And even though we know that we have to go through both thick and thin, you know, we get told, all you're called to in our religious life together. I don't know if any of you are familiar with a story by Marjorie Williams. It's called The Velveteen Rabbit. There's a little bit of a story about love in that. I wanted to share just a little bit of that with you. She writes this. She says, "What is real?" asked the rabbit one day, when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came to tidy the room. "Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and a stick-out handle?" "Real isn't how you are made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" asked the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. "When you are real, you don't mind being hurt." "Does it happen all at once, like being wound up?" he asked. "Or bit by bit?" "It doesn't happen all at once," said the skin horse. "You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. "I suppose you are real," said the rabbit. And then he wished he had not said it, for he thought the skin horse might be sensitive. But the skin horse only smiled. "The boy's uncle made me real," he said. "That was a great many years ago. But once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always." When a child loves you for a long, long time, you become real. Rabbit is asking Skin Horse about a kind of transformation in the life of a child's toy. In this beautiful, imagined conversation, we learn that the transformation to being real happens when one is loved. Loved to the point that possibly lost fur become loose in joints, but loved. We learn from Skin Horse that this beautiful transformation on the inside has a catalyst from the outside. The catalyst is this all-purpose leavener that we know as love. The story describes what bell hooks would say is the real power of love, which is to transform us. But bell hooks also reminds us that the practice of love offers no place of safety, because we risk loss, hurt, pain. We risk being acted upon by forces outside of our control. It seems to me that this leavener, which we know as love, is at the center of our ministries here at Mount Diablo. We live in anxiety and fear and in reverence and joy, and still through religious acts of love, live a life that means each step we take is toward the mystery of who we are becoming, what the world is becoming, what we dream of the world becoming. And by doing so, by engaging in that love, we do risk loss, hurt, and pain. And I do hope that we don't have to wait for most of our hair to be loved off, and for our eyes to drop out, and to get loose in the joints and very shabby to see the fruits of our commitment to love. I was thinking about that sense of how we see maybe what we call the fruits of our labor. Prior to this call to ministry, I spent about 10 years teaching school. And I often thought at the end of the day, did I make a difference in these children's lives? And I wasn't sure. I mean, the evidence wasn't immediately there. You know, I would, during that same time, I would volunteer at the local food co-op, and one of my jobs was to sweep the floor. After I was done sweeping the floor, I knew that it was clean. I could see. I started, right, with a dirty floor, and when I was done, it was clean. But this act of education, and maybe in this act of ministry, we don't have that sense of the immediate. And so we have this commitment to the long haul. And let us not forget about this call for just love. Just love. We have the love part, but we also have that the justice. That focus of our love to create justice in the world. This is how bell hooks would remind us about that kind of love. She says that the moment we choose to love, we begin to move against domination, against oppression.